10 a.m. to 12 noon, right here on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College, streaming at ncc.edu/WHPC.
Catch Nassau Lions men's and women's basketball action live on Saturday afternoon at 1. Come on, let's go Lions!
The voice of Nassau Community College.
Nominated for 12 big Intercollegiate Broadcasting System awards, including Best Community College Radio Station in the nation.
Available everywhere on the Odyssey app.
WHPC HD Garden City.
90.3 WHPC.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hi everyone, this is Jewish Talk coming to you from Nassau Community College on 90.3 WHPC, also streaming on the NCC radio. That's what I mean by that is that we have a website. You can actually see us. If you can't hear us on the radio, you can actually listen to us online. Go to nccradio.org. So tell your friends and your neighbors and even the people you don't like. Oh, God forbid, everybody loves everybody. Just tell them nccradio.org. And this program is later archived on Spreaker.com and all on your favorite podcasts. And this program is repeated on Sunday evening at 11 p.m. So hi there, my name is Rabbi Perl. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This all depends on when you are listening and watching us. When I say watching, you can actually, this very second, go to Facebook Live, and put the word WHPC. You can watch it on WHPC or on my own page, facebook.com, Anshul Pearl, and where you can actually post a note, a hello, as I say hello this morning and welcome Jean Brandonston, Susan Shalom, Karen Dumbeck, and Linda Zellickson, and everybody out there on the radio. I can see you, dear friends. Okay, sit up over there. Come on. This is the radio. Have some respect. So hello on the radio, hello online, hello on the world, as I say hello to Jeffrey Hirsch. Jeffrey, you couldn't sleep this morning. Good morning. Let's get right into this. You know, I have a lot of things to share with you, and I want to first let you know that a wonderful, wonderful listener and watcher and doctor, you may hear his name from time to time, Dr. Eitan Kilshevsky, who just concluded several weeks of volunteering his expertise in the land of Israel. And he sent me this email. And it inspired me. And I'd like to share that with you and how we can learn from this and do the same in our own home as well. Let me give you the background first. This week's Torah portion is Yisro. Highlighted is the 10 commandments that were given to the Jewish people. One of those commandments is remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. Zohor es Yom HaShabbos l'kadsheh. I'm now going to jump to the land of Israel. One of the wonderful IDF soldiers who recently passed away in Gaza was Captain Yaron Chetiz. And he was killed fighting. Now, on the last Shabbos, before he passed away, he visited his family in the town of Ra'anana. And he made the following observation. What's going on here, he said, obviously in Hebrew. We sing more Shabbat songs among my comrades in Gaza. He basically was saying everybody's sitting around the Shabbos table and nothing's going on. And he says when he's back with his troops, they're singing Shabbos songs. He did add that the food that the soldiers receive in Gaza may not be as tasty as at home, but the meals with his comrades out there are rich with singing, with dancing, and sharing Torah lessons. And it's obvious he was sitting at the table there, and nothing was going on. As I say hello, shalom to New Jersey. Unbelievable. That's Joseph Kavanagh. And Dr. Kilshevsky, who I'm sharing this from him, is actually watching us, and I'm waving to him. He's in rainy Israel. Well, we had rainy Friday here. So this captain, sadly, as I said, he lost his life in Gaza, made this comment to his friends or his family in Ra'anana, that the Shabbos table wasn't exactly, there was no excitement, there's no words of Torah, there was no singing. And then next few days he passed away. His family saw this as his, you could say, his ethical will. In that this was his desire. This was just before he passed away. And we all know it's very significant to listen very carefully to a loved one in those last days, remaining days of a person's life, because people speak from the heart and speak the truth and look for the truth. So the family felt this was their relatives, will. This is what he wanted. And therefore he asked that we add to our Shabbat one more song in his memory. And I want to thank Dr. Kilshevsky for his service and also bringing this to my attention. So this week in my synagogue on Friday night and Shabbos morning, I quoted Eitan, and I urged my congregation to make the Shabbos Friday night meal in particular, make it into something more meaningful. Add another song for Yaron. Add another song. Add another word of Torah. Make the Shabbos meals more meaningful. And therefore, I'd like to, in memory of Yaron, share with you one of the most beautiful songs that are sung on Friday night when we come home after singing Shalom Aleichem. Before we make Kiddush, we sing a most beautiful 22-verse hymn. It's called Eshes Chayil, Eshet Chayil, Woman of Valor. This is an alphabetic acrostic found. What that means is that there are 22 letters. Each letter starts with one of the letters of the Hebrew alphabet in the right order. So Eshes Chayil is Aleph. And where do you find it? You find it in the closing verbs of the book of the closing verses in the book of Proverbs, also known as Mishlei. It is traditionally sung in many Jewish homes on Friday night before Kiddush. It starts off one of the tunes, one of the most common tunes and the most favorite amongst many, is the song, and the tune that goes like this. Eishes Chayil miyimtza v'rachak mipini michra batach b'olei bala v'shala lo yachzar v'laseh tov v'lo ra kol yemei chayeho. And that's how it goes throughout the song. Although I have not seen it documented, it seems that, like much of our Friday night rituals, this custom of singing this song originated with the mystics of Sfat, specifically the students of Rabbi Isaac Luria the Arizal. And this was a way of greeting the Shekhinah. Shekhinah means the divine presence, and the Shabbat queen, as I will soon explain. There's something very big going on when we sing this song, Eshes Chayil, a woman of valor. Perhaps the earliest mention of this custom can be found in the Siddur of Rabbi Yeshua Halevi Horowitz, the Shalah. So on the most basic level, the reason why we sing Eshes Chayil, because it has become a way of expressing gratitude to the lady of the house. For what is more fitting than to sing her praises, one's spouse, on Friday night, after she has worked tirelessly to ensure that the Shabbat queen, the atmosphere, the holiness of the family, the holiness of guests coming together, can be greeted in royal fashion. Indeed, the Arizal is known to have kissed his mother's on both of her hands every Friday night. Some follow this custom and have the children kiss their mother's hands on Friday night. It's not so much in the Chabad custom, but if anybody listening or anybody watching us know of this or in your family, please let us know. But the idea is Friday night, we pause and we recognize the beauty and the holiness and the strength of the lady of the house, woman of valor. Some say that this woman of valor refers to a generic, praiseworthy woman. And according to the Medrash, Eshes Chayil was originally composed by our forefather Abraham as a eulogy to his wife. As he laid his wife Sarah to rest, he composed this prayer, Eshes Chayil. And later, it was included by King Solomon in the book of Proverbs. According to others, it was written by King Solomon to honor his mother, Queen Bathsheba, who, of course, we all know was the wife of King David. Furthermore, commentaries on the book of Proverbs explain that the reason why we have 22 verses in this Eshes Chayil prayer correspond to 19 great Jewish women. The last 4 verses correspond to the same person, but overarching, the whole purpose of the Eshes Chayil is to remind everybody at the Shabbos table of the extraordinary great Jewish women who have played an important role in our lives throughout history, and for us to think about the lessons we can learn from them. These explanations point to the simple reason for reciting Eshes Chayil on Friday night. They are a way to express our deep gratitude for the lady of the house. But there are far deeper reasons as well. And and the reason that we actually reflecting that is even if a person is alone, there is no person perhaps is not married, whatever the case may be, we still sing that song because there's very, very big things going on, very deep ideas going on when we sing this particular prayer. By the way, we just got a note who are those 19 Jewish women reflected in this prayer, in this song. It includes from Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah, all the way down to Ruth. According to the Shalah, this hymn is a metaphor for Shekhinah, for the divine presence. And Shekhinah, by the way, is the feminine manifestation of God. So for those who get hung up about always speaking about God in a masculine sense, don't get nervous. Sit down, get yourself a handkerchief, calm down, and know that God has both masculine and feminine aspects. We just generally speak of him more in the masculine sense. But God has inclusive everything. God created everyone, and therefore includes everything that we can imagine. So he explains that the 22-verse acrostic, which goes through the entire Hebrew alphabet, correspond, listen to this, my friends, to the 22 mystical conduits of blessings that are opened up to each and every one of us on Shabbat. So when we sing the Eshes Chayil, we now connect ourselves, we plug in to our extraordinary, all-inclusive blessings that include every single letter of the Hebrew alphabet. This mirrors the teachings of the Zohar, that when a person goes through Shabbos from the Sabbath, we bless the upcoming week. So appropriately, in the Eshes Chayil, we say, she rises when it is still night. She gives food to her household and an allotted share to her maidens. The blessing of food for the household comes from Shabbat. And on Shabbat itself, we connect to those blessings for the coming week through singing the Eishes Chayil, the woman of valor. Furthermore, the term I'm using is Eishes Chayil. Chayil is, we typically translate as a woman of valor, Eishes Chayil. Also, it's the Hebrew letter Chayal, Chayalim, is the Hebrew word for soldiers. Fascinating. Dear friends, stand by. The word Chayal, Ches Yud Lamed, Ches is 8, Yud is 10, Lamed is 30, has a numerical value of 48. What's the connection between Chayal and 48? Says the Mishnah, if a person wants to acquire his deeper relationship with God's wisdom, with the Torah, the Mishnah lays out 48 attributes. So inherent in the Eishes Chayil, or the Chayal, on the many levels, is our inner connection with Hashem's Torah, given to us at Mount Sinai. Therefore, Eishes Chayil is a metaphor for the Torah. And why are we suddenly relating it to Torah? Is because the Torah was given on Shabbat. So on Shabbat, we connect to the Torah by singing the Eishes Chayil, and it has 48. These are the 48 attributes that are so inherent in the Torah, or connecting us to what Torah is all about. So I am going to see if I can find, let's see now, I'm going on to my see if I can find the Eishes Chayil. Let's see now, Eishes Chayil, and because I know we have a request here for me to sing it, but I let's see now. You got to know all the words, so let's see if I can do that. Let's continue though. The Shabbat Queen. The Kabbalists explain that Shabbat Queen, that the Shabbat itself, in reflectiveness and deep, is compared to a queen, a Malka. Also, Eishes Chayil. Therefore, we sing Eishes Chayil to welcome the Shabbat Queen. Yes, I want to say hello to Richard Rottenberg. He thinks I'm in my office here. All right. The Medrash relates that every day of creation was created with a mate. Sunday is paired with Monday. Tuesday partners with Wednesday. And Thursday partners with Friday. So it seems that Shabbat is left without a mate, without a partner. So in response to Shabbat's complaint, God replied, I'm going to give you a mate, I'm going to give you a partner. And Hashem said, the Jewish people will be the Shabbat's mate. Therefore, we sing Eishes Chayil on Friday night to the Shabbat bride in all of its meaning and all of its glory and all of its importance. So this is part of our appreciation of what Shabbos is all about. Furthermore, Eishes Chayil refers to the soul. It may be this is another insight to this, it may be a praise to the animal soul, or more specifically the intellectual soul that we have, through which the godly soul serves God throughout the week. Alternatively, in other words, in a certain sense, Eishes Chayil is an appreciation that we have a body and we have an intellectual side of ourselves, and that the neshama, which is the really reason why we're in this world, is to impact it, works through that soul, the animal soul, and works through the body that we have. And that's the Eishes Chayil. We appreciate that we have a body, we have a soul, an intellectual soul through which we impact the world. Alternatively, it is also said that it is a praise of the godly soul that we have. Why do we have to praise the godly soul? Because let's be honest, as we say hello to Patty Fuchs, to Wayne and Patty. See, our soul that we all have left a very high place in heaven. And it left and it arrived on the day that we were born. Came down to this very mundane physical world. On Shabbat, the soul is lifted up spiritually, and God, together with the heavenly host, sings its praise. A woman of valor who can find, for her price is beyond the pearls. So in a deeper sense, the Eshes Chayil is a way of Hashem saying, thank you for using this great gift of a soul, the Eshes Chayil, the woman of valor who's gone into this world and made a difference. Wow. When I learned this, and I want to thank Dr. Kolshevsky for inspiring me with this note of an Israeli soldier, a captain no less, who lost his life in Gaza, who made a point of saying to his family in Ra'anana, the Shabbos before he passed away, put more emphasis, put more song, put more excitement, more passion into our Shabbos meals. And now we have a deeper reason of why we sing the Eshes Chayil in all of its meanings. In truth, all these explanations that I've shared with you are interconnected. For it is the noble woman of the home, more than the man, who makes the home into a divine spiritual place. Let's be open. Gentlemen, I know it may hurt you, but the real deal in the home is our spouse, is our dear wife. She is the one who makes it a holy place, a place of Torah, a place where our souls can flourish, to serve Hashem in all that we do, to make sure we eat kosher, so that our body is filled with holy energy. As the Medrash says in relation to Eshes Chayil, just as God gave the Jewish people the Torah through the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, so too does he praise the Jewish woman with 22 letters. So thank you again. Thank you so much. I also want to say this is by divine providence that this special weekend is dedicated to women. This past Thursday, an extraordinary conference opened up in conjunction with the anniversary of the Rebbitzins' passing. Thousands of women have gathered now over this weekend to mark the 36th anniversary of the passing of Rebbitzin Chaya Mushka Schneerson of righteous memory. This is the Rebbitzin, the wife of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And annually, the emissaries, co-directors of Chabad houses throughout the world gather for an annual convention in conjunction and to be inspired by the leadership and the attributes of the Rebbitzin Chaya Mushka Schneerson. So these women who are leaders around the world converge in New York this weekend for the International Conference of Chabad Lubavitch Women Emissaries. In Hebrew it's called Kinus Hashluchot. This is an annual event aimed at strengthening global Jewish awareness and practice. My dear wife Bluma is attending, representing our community, and she reported to me that the conference began on Thursday with a prayerful visit to the Ohel, to the resting place of the Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson of righteous memory, and to the grave, to the resting place of his wife, the Rebbitzin, and her father, the sixth Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson of righteous memory. Before entering into the Ohel, the conference goers came together to hear words of inspiration from their colleagues. And many conference participants brought prayer petitions, notes with them from their far-flung communities to leave at the resting place, and prayers could be heard in many languages, spoken by some 3,000 conference attendees, hailing from as far as Melbourne, Australia, and Accra in Ghana. With Israel at war in Gaza and the barbaric attacks on Simchas Torah not far from anyone's minds, my wife reports there is a delegation from more than 1,400 communities representing communities in Israel who came to participate and to pray for a nation at war. And they were the ones honored to lead the reciting of selected psalms at the Rebbitzins' resting place. Let's be honest with ourselves. This year's conference comes when all of us, especially in Israel, are experiencing a tremendous upheaval. These shluchos, these more than 1,400, representing so many communities across the length and breadth of Israel, are on the front lines, addressing the physical and emotional challenges of their communities non-stop. That is why it began at the Ohel to be infused and to be renewed in their strength to continue their critical mission. After their trip to the Ohel, all these conference participants returned to Crown Heights to partake in more than 30 workshops on a kaleidoscope of contemporary issues. It was held continues to be held in locations, and then they all gathered on Thursday evening for a big welcoming session at the Bedford Armory. This morning, perhaps even as I speak to you now, what was known as the iconic class picture, where all the women gather in front of 770 Eastern Parkway, and a big family picture is taken. And this big, huge, important conference by women will be capped with the grand gala banquet today, Sunday, when more than 4,000 people are expected to attend in person, and countless more around the world will be viewing this banquet, which can be seen live. And if you have a pen and pencil, write down where you can actually join to see this taking place online. Go to chabadmineola.com, chabadmineola.com, one word, chabadmineola.com/live. Very easy. chabadmineola.com/live. Tune in about, I think it begins at 4:30 p.m. this afternoon. I'd like to now change our little subject and speak a little bit about how a glass of milk is really a cup of kindness. Let me explain. As I say hello to everyone joining us on the radio, as Charles Osgood said, I'll see you on the radio. And everybody joining us on Facebook. And I hope I've recognized everybody. Let's see now. David Klitnick, thank you so much. Levana Lichter, Stephen Epstein, Ashrei, unbelievable. Laura May, wow, it was great to see you in Shul. Miriam, thank you. And everybody else joining us. So let's go to our cup of milk. Here's something that happens all the time. Someone acts out of line, objectively so, and you need to discipline them. A child hits a sibling or a peer. A friend plays around with addictive substances. Or your spouse says something particularly nasty to you. So what do? Do you let it go, opting to be a nice guy and avoid rocking the boat? Or do you intervene, telling off the child giving your friend the skinny, or telling your spouse that you've been hurt? Which one is the right path to take? You know what the answer is? Both. The trick is to do them in the right order. In the Torah portion this coming week, we introduced the laws of kosher with the famous enigmatic words, do not boil a kid in its mother's milk, from which we learn one of the most bedrock of kosher laws. This is the basis of the laws, the prohibition to mix meat and dairy. That the two cannot mix is relatively common knowledge. We all know about this. Lesser known are the laws governing the sequence in which these two foods may be eaten. So, a cheeseburger is a no-no. But may I down a glass of milk and immediately thereafter go for the pastrami, a pastramela? How about the other way around? So Jewish law is very clear. After one eats meat, there is a required waiting time of 6 hours. In contrast, after eating dairy products, the wait time is much shorter, varying by custom. Some half an hour, some an hour. So what is the deeper implication of this distinction? What message is contained in the fact that meat requires a longer separation before milk is introduced, but not the other way around, when we precede the meat with a milk product? So the answer is, we must appreciate that milk represents kindness. Meat represents discipline. Kabbalah teaches that every creation, every being, has an inner spiritual dimension. That's why we don't mix roles, male with female, female with male, because everybody has their specific dimension that they can impact the world. What belongs to them, not to take it from somebody else. Therefore, a piece of steak and a glass of milk differ not merely in body, but also in spirit. In spirit, talking about spirit, Zalman Weg has just joined us. But also in spirit, their differing physical characteristics express a deeper difference in their spiritual source. And this applies to all the things in our life. In the spiritual realm, milk and meat are sources from opposing godly traits: kindness, chesed, and discipline, gevurah. These two characters are somewhat of a prototype in Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, two vastly different ways in which God relates to this world. One with expansiveness, with benevolence, graciousness, and the other way is with discipline, with discretion, with harshness. So the spiritual sources for milk and meat are even reflected in the natural color of the two materials. Think about this. Meat, which comes from gevurah, is red, a bright and harsh color, whereas milk, which stems from chesed, kindness, is white, pure and soft. We're almost ready to return to the discussion regarding the wait time between milk and meat. But first we must detour and explore an important law in the world of kosher. What happens when kosher and non-kosher foods mix? Does the latter contaminate the former, rendering it treif? Generally speaking, the rule is that food must be hot for taste to transfer. Cold kosher and non-kosher foods that touch do not pose a problem. When they're hot, however, they exchange tastes and the non-kosher food renders the kosher food unkosher. For example, if a slice of hot-baked apple fell on a hot piece of bacon, the taste of bacon transfers to the apple and vice versa due to the heat, and the apple becomes as non-kosher as the bacon. What then is the rule when only one food is hot? If, for example, it was an apple from the fridge that fell on a hot piece of bacon, do we say that the hot bacon heats up the apple and transfers its taste? Or do we say that the apple cools down the bacon and prevents any taste from transferring at all? Well, the law is tator goiver, which translates the bottom prevails. In other words, whichever food is on the bottom dominates. Therefore, if hot food is placed or falls onto cold food, it's still kosher. Whereas if cold food is placed or falls on hot food, it is now treif. Please, dear friends, the laws of kashrus are pretty complex, and therefore if you have any specific questions, please feel free to speak to your rabbi to get guidance. Let's bring this all together. Remember, if you start with meat, you must take a significant break and then start again with milk. By contrast, right, we said 6 hours. By contrast, if you start with milk, you can move on to the meat relatively quickly, depending on your custom, at least 30 minutes, or even those who up to an hour, but far less than waiting after meat. Why? Because in life, you must always begin with kindness. Of course, every person needs both milk and meat in their life. And as we're learning today, it also spiritually means kindness and discipline. Not every situation calls for us to be permissive, to say yes. Sometimes we must forcibly put down our foot and say no. And sometimes we even need to say a few words of criticism. But the laws of milk and meat teach us how properly to balance these two emotions. Inasmuch as the bottom is dominant, as we're learning, the one we establish first influences what follows. So if you start with kindness, in our sense, milk, you've established kindness as your base, and it tempers any ensuing discipline. That is desirable and is reflected in the law that when milk comes first, kindness, you don't need to wait very long until you can eat meat. But if you start with discipline, after many years as a rabbi, you encounter lots of people, and lots of people only have criticism. Their whole life is to see negativity. It's very hard to listen to what they have to say because their foundation, their premise of life is always negative. They start off with the meat. That's the discipline side. So if a person establishes discipline as their baseline, that dominates their life, and that will dominate any ensuing kindness. This is not the proper path. And we must start all over again. Reflected in the law that if meat comes first, you got to take it easy. You got to calm down. You got to take a long wait time before you can start resuming milk. So if a person is a negative kind of person, he's a meaty kind of person, he's a red, hot-headed, so to speak, he's going to get nowhere. He better take it easy. Step back there like we do. We wait after meat for 6 hours for this to go, to calm down, to reflect, to rejuvenate. And then you can start with the chesed. Nobody wants to listen to anyone whose whole life is just filled with negativity. Even if they do say something nice once in a while. But the person's established himself as a meaty kind of guy. Kindness always wins. What's the message, of course, to all of us today? As we go through life, always begin with kindness. Our baseline approach into life, to others, to ourselves, whatever, should always be the baseline approach with graciousness and loving. A good morning, a joke, a word of kindness, an uplifting word. Of course, from time to time, we might have to say words of criticism, little, words of discipline here and there. But make sure to sweeten it first with love. Even if a person, we were discussing this in the shul, even if a person sometimes has to, say things which you have to remind the person to use the word lightly, criticize someone. Ask yourself if you want what's best for that person, or simply want to let them have it. Many times people react. Right? Where's it coming from? It's not coming from. They don't want to let the guy have it. It's not coming from kindness. If it's the latter, if a person's doing this, let him have it. Take it easy. Think it over. Sit down. Halzachain. If it's the former, if a person's looking at something or someone and wants to help the person, what was interestingly shared on Shabbos was sometimes when you see someone else doing something you don't like, you're really seeing it in yourself. It's a mirror of yourself. If something bothers someone, it's usually what's themselves. And I have to sometimes when people bring things to my attention, I have to think it over carefully. When the person reports something about someone, where is it coming from? Is it coming from the milk, or is it coming from the meat? Is it coming from I want to give this other guy? And it really is usually sometimes the criticism of someone else comes from what is they themselves are facing themselves. So if it's the latter, let them have it. Think about it again. If it's the former, if a person's a kind person, people know you as a kind person, they can appreciate that if a few words of tough come out once in a while, it's really couched as a constructive comment because it's preceded. You know that person has kindness, loving words. He puts his milk before his meat, as opposed to someone who always puts his meat before his milk. If you need to take action against a child, or express hurt feelings to a spouse, or cut an employee's pay, who knows what. There are ways to do such things without coming across as a bull in a china shop. Take time to look under your own hood, so to speak, and determine how to sweeten and how to soften the blow and how to do it in a kind way, in an uplifting way. Whatever it is, what I would say to you, dear friends, is remember to first drink a glass of milk and serve it with a cup of kindness. I noticed Laura May spoke about empathy. Jean Brandiston speaks about holding back completely builds resentment. That's a good question. If a person sees something, I will tell you from personal experience that earlier on in my position, a lot of things bothered me. And after a while, I realized that I'm giving that particular person's actions too much free rent in my head. And it was building up resentment in myself every time I saw that person, because there was a lot of negativity going on. Then I realized, the only person who's being hurt by this is myself by holding on to it. So I let go. And I said to myself, this person comes with so much baggage. So whether it's myself or the shul or whatever, is like a place to unload. So I had rachmanis, as Laura says, empathy. I said, you know what? So I let go of myself. I said, you know what? I understand where the guy's coming from. And you know what? I made a point of saying something nice without that resentment inside of me anymore. And we're friends. And we can live. We can coexist, so to speak. remember, put the milk before the milk. Put the milk before the meat. If you put the meat, the toughness first, you got to wait 6 hours. You got to take it easy. You got to calm down over here. Otherwise, it's going to be a disaster, not only in the halachic sense, but also in the spiritual sense that we share with everyone today. By popular demand, I'd like to share with you, another aspect that comes up this week in the Torah portion. We're talking about the Aleph over the Beis. What do I mean? Up until now, until this past week, we had started the Torah with the word Beis. Bereshis bara Elokim. Beis is a Beis. That's the second letter. It's only this week where, after learning about the creation, the birth of our patriarchs and matriarchs, their trials and the enslavement in Egypt, we're now ready to point to what was originally intended and designed, the Torah at Mount Sinai. God, the heavens part, Hashem reveals himself. He opens up with the Ten Commandments, and it's with an Aleph. Anochi Hashem Elokecha. So the creation, beginning of the Torah starts with a Beis, the second letter, but let's remember this week, we start with the Ten Commandments with the letter Aleph. What are the words? Anochi Hashem Elokecha. I am Hashem, your God, who took you out of the land of Egypt. You shall not have any gods others in my presence. So to the keen student, these words, the first of the Ten Commandments, are baffling. In fact, the words, I am Hashem who took you out of the land of Egypt, doesn't seem to be a commandment at all, but a statement of fact. So why is God reminding us that he took us out of Egypt? And why does he consider that to be a commandment? This line is in stark contrast to the next sentence, which does say, do not have any other gods. Here the commandment is direct and clear, telling us exactly what not to do. Do not worship any other deities. But what is the action item? I am Hashem, your God. Anochi Hashem Elokecha. The Rambam, Maimonides, explains that the first mitzvah is that we are commanded to acquire knowledge of the nature of God's existence. That means to understand that he is the original cause and the source of existence who brings all creations into being. And what is the source of this commandment? Anochi Hashem Elokecha. I am Hashem, your God. So despite the ambiguous wordings of the verse, the Rambam clearly holds that this is a positive mitzvah to believe in God. But there, everybody gets all bent out of shape. The famous philosopher, scholar, Rabbi Perl of Spain, he writes in his book called Hashem, this is problematic on two fronts. He says, why would Hashem need to issue a commandment to believe in him? After all, those who believe don't need to be commanded. And those who, God forbid, don't believe, won't believe even if they are commanded. Second, even putting aside the theoretical problems with a command to believe, there's also a practical one. To believe or not to believe is not a choice, but a fact. Belief is not something that can be turned on or off at will. It is a deep intuition that comes from the depth within. And one either has it or doesn't have it. To command one to believe seems to make as little sense as a law of Congress requiring Americans to believe that there is life on Mars. It's an absolute absurdity. For these reasons, this Rabbi Chastai notes that the well-known mistake of counting belief in God is one of the positive commandments, because there can be no commandment without one commanding it. And moreover, belief in God, not only the things that are subject to choice or will. So the question comes back on the Rambam. And I don't think our program today gives us the full picture, but it's interesting to think about this. Is there a command to believe in God? if there's commandments, then there's pre-existing commander. So how does the Rambam hold I'm your God is the source of believing God? There is a mitzvah to believe. So how can the Rambam, Maimonides, disregard this formidable philosophical problem by saying that I'm Hashem, your God, this is a command to believe? What really does that mean? There are many, many deep answers to this. The Rebbe writes and he explains. He sees it in a very, very unique way. The Rebbe explains there is one word that transforms us as a people, that brings new life to us every day. And that is, as the Rambam writes, that the foundation of all foundations of wisdom is to know that there is a primary being who brought into being all existence, the heavens and the earth and everything in between. Just a short while later, he explains that the knowledge is to know God. What does that mean? What does it mean to, one place he says you're going to believe, and then another place he uses the word to know. To really believe, the Rambam says, means to know. The belief in God is to know God. This is the first mitzvah. What does it mean to believe and to know God? Is to bring one's faith from the recesses, the built-in, pre-existing belief that we have in God, to translate itself into the consciousness and the recognition in our life itself. The mitzvah is to establish a link between the mind and the heart, to live in a reality where a supreme being is responsible for all the apparent, chaos around us. In this sense, the mitzvah Anochi, the first letter Aleph, Anochi, the first word, empowers us to confront one of the greatest challenges of life. And what is that? The gap that exists between the mind and emotions. The mind sits in one's head, and there's a narrow strait. It's called the neck. The great neck or the little neck. But there's a gap between the mind and the emotions, from the head to the heart. The phenomenon of believing one thing in the head, but feeling something entirely different in the heart, is something that all of us face every single day and every single moment of our life. The mind usually knows the truth and what the right thing is to do. But the heart reacts quickly to all of its stimuli and craves immediate gratification. This is something that we're studying at great length recently in our ongoing bi-monthly class of the Tanya. The brain understands that what the heart wants will harm one's health, relationships, career, reputation, spirituality, or even one's own life. But impulse makes a person forget the facts and indulges in the risky, harmful, or hurtful behavior. This week, Israeli news media reported that one of the most tragic and painful murder cases in the history of the state came to a close. This was about Ophir and Dikla Chasdai, were the parents of 3 girls, 2 of whom suffered severe health problems and required their parents' full-time care. One day in July of 2019, Ophir and Dikla were parking in the Azrieli Mall in Ramla. As Ophir was pulling into a spot, he saw that it was partially blocked by a vehicle in the adjacent spot that was parked over the line. Seeing a woman standing next to the car, he shouted to her, "Why are you parked in 2 spots?" A heated exchange ensued, with the woman hitting Ophir with her bag. And Ophir responded by pushing her and causing her to fall to the ground. At this point, the woman's husband emerged from the car, shouting at Ophir for hitting his wife, before retrieving and shooting Ophir without warning. In an instant, 2 families were destroyed. The court this week found the shooter guilty of murder. Look, I share this with you because these were 2 normal families brought to ruin by emotions. Because people are sometimes slaves to emotions. Often in life, what factors most prominently into our behavior is not what we know or understand, but what we feel. And with fear, anger, or panic coursing through this, it happens sometimes that nothing can save us from ourselves. The mind knows well the concept of divine providence. The mind, our depth, knows there is an eye that watches us, and there's an ear that hears everything that we do. But once the heart identifies some perceived threat to its own well-being, all logic and reason goes out the window. The rift between mind and emotion can be most pronounced in trying times like these, with our people under attack, brutalized and horrified, with 136 innocent people still held hostage, and thousands of defenders away from home without their families and sources of income. So this is the role, my friends, of the very first of the 613 mitzvahs, to know there's a primary being, as is written, Anochi Hashem Lakecho, I am Hashem your God, who took you out of the land of Egypt. Hashem says to every one of us, you have witnessed with your own eyes that I run the show, I run the world. And I defeated the mighty Pharaoh and led you to safety on the seashore. Now you must engrave this into your mind and heart and commit yourself in the fulfillment of the mitzvahs. This is what it means to know. The Torah states in Bereshis, when we talk about knowing, Adam knew Eve. Adam knew Chava, his wife, and she conceived and bore a child, Cain. Knowledge here doesn't mean intellectual acquaintance. He knew her, but it's a profound and intimate union of husband and wife who become merged, become one, not only physically but spiritually, in heart, in soul and body, to become one flesh and to create a new reality altogether. So this is what the Rambam is teaching, that the first mitzvah of the Torah is not merely some kind of intellectual familiarity with belief in God, but to know, the emphasis to know that there's a primary being, and to turn that belief into concrete feeling to a point that one is wholeheartedly loving Hashem, that's providing us with everything, and to the point that one lives with a deep sense of meaning that stems from the fact that Hashem is directing all of his attention to everything in every aspect of our deeds. So mere belief, on the other hand, requires no command. Faith comes naturally from the heart inside of us. And the truth is, faith lies quite plainly in the heart of all mankind. Right? Gather 10 people to anywhere in the world and ask them if they believe in the existence of a higher being. You know what? 9 out of 10 will respond affirmatively. This is what we learn here today. May Hashem bless us. Think about all these ideas. And most importantly, what I have in my mind is make sure to put milk before the meat. Be kind, and then you can get right into the meat. But if you put yourself into the world of meat, hot-headed and negative and, that way, wait, calm down before you have some milk, because otherwise people will see you as one piece of meat, so to speak, one. Okay, you know the rest of the story. Have a wonderful week. Stay safe. Shalom.